Good morning, everyone, and welcome. And my name is Walton, and I'm delighted to be here with my co-presenters, Emma Boddington and Barbara Chandler, as we launch the inaugural thought leadership book, Sustainable Development Without Borders, Western Sydney University to the World. So thank you all for joining us for this important and exciting session. But before we begin, I'd like to walk you through today's agenda for the launch of Sustainable Development Without Borders. We'll start with a set of keynote presentations. First, we'll be hearing about Western Open Books and the broader vision of open access publishing, a critical foundation for the collaborative work we're celebrating today. And then we'll explore the background and motivation for the book, including how this project came together and why it matters. Following this, we'll move into our author presentations. We'll hear from contributors on three key themes that span disciplines and sectors. First, climate action at Western, showcasing initiatives and research that align with global sustainability goals. And then we'll shift our focus to workforce issues in the disability sector, exploring equity, inclusion, practical policy impacts. And finally, open knowledge and action, launching our collaborative book and looking at how this open model fosters innovation and shared learning. We'll wrap up with a Q&A session, so please hold your questions until then. We're looking forward to an engaging discussion. And to close, we'll offer some final reflections and thanks during closing remarks. Now that you've had a sense of what's ahead, let's move into the first part of our program, our keynote presentation. I'd now like to hand over to Emma Boddington to introduce our keynote presenters.
Lucy. I'm delighted to introduce Ms. Fiona Salisbury, Executive Director of Library Services at Western Sydney University. Fiona leads Western Open Books, our university's open access publishing platform, which supports researchers in making their work freely available and globally impactful. Today she'll share how open access publishing advances equity, visibility and real-world impact. Please welcome Ms. Fiona Salisbury.
Thank you very much, Emma, and good morning, everybody, and thank you again for joining us today for the launch of the latest publication from Western Open, which is Sustainable Development Without Borders. And I'm very excited to have an opportunity to tell you a little bit about Western Open Books. It's an initiative of the Western Sydney University Library. It's a champion of open access, and while it was only established a couple of years ago, it's thanks to the commitment, the professionalism and the expertise of our amazing library team, it's already emerging as a high-quality open access publisher. And Western Open Books provides a range of support and services for authors throughout the publishing process. And I think it's already having an impact by publishing open textbooks that are freely available to students, but also, more importantly, making Western Sydney University research freely available to youth readers. So Western Open Books is about fostering a culture of knowledge sharing, collaboration and sparking meaningful conversations. We believe there are many reasons why open access publishing makes a difference. And I could go on about this all day, but I won't. I'm just going to share a few of those reasons with you. So for example, it removes paywalls and it ensures that valuable research is accessible to everybody, regardless of their financial or institutional affiliation. It also provides unrestricted access, which significantly increases the visibility of the search. And there's quite a few studies that have shown open access articles and books are frequently cited and reach a broader audience compared to those behind paywalls. It also ensures that researchers from underfunded institutions have the same access to information as those from better funded universities. And this promotes a much more equitable and inclusive research environment. But most importantly, from our perspective in the library, open access publishing starts conversations and it encourages interdisciplinary collaboration. Researchers from different fields can easily access and contribute to each other's work. And in our experience, we have seen how this has led to further research and writing partnerships and more open access books. Another way open access publishing of research has an impact is that it's not limited to academic circles. It's available to policymakers, practitioners and the general public, fostering a wider understanding and appreciation of the research that we do in universities. In this way, open access publishing can directly benefit communities by providing them with the latest information on health, education and social issues. And this empowers individuals and organisations to make informed decisions and advocate for positive change. And this is the aspiration that we have for the books that we publish at Western Open Books. For the library team at Western Sydney University, our aim is for Western Open Books to be more than just a repository of academic publications. For us, open access publishing is a catalyst for promoting research, fostering innovation and starting really critical conversations. So I hope that today's launch starts some conversation, and if you are interested in learning more about Western Open Books and the publishing services and support we offer, please don't hesitate to come and talk to me or any of the library team that are here today. We'd really like to collaborate with you and continue to make a positive impact through open access publishing and Western Open Books. Thank you, and I'll pass back to you.
Now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Professor Kevin Dunn. Professor Dunn is the Provost at Western Sydney University, providing leadership and responsibility for 12 academic schools, Whitlam Institute and College. He's been instrumental in shaping the vision behind Sustainable Development Without Borders, a book that captures Western Sydney University's commitment to thought leadership in sustainability. Today he'll share the story of this publication, its genesis, purpose, and its impact on our academic and broader communities. Please join me in welcoming Professor Kevin Dunn.
Would you read Mullinawa Warrabi? I just said good morning. Good morning. It's now afternoon, but anyway, hello and welcome in the language of Darug people. They're the traditional owners on the lands where many of our campuses are located, and I acknowledge that we already have the ability of the country, but just a shout out to those Indigenous owners for the gifts that are these lands on which we do our work in Western Sydney. For a university that prides itself on sustainability and impact and translation, community engagement, these are important cultural protocols. And they remain so, from my mind. It's a great pleasure for me to see this Western Sydney University initiative come to fruition. It is a Western Sydney University initiative, and it's amazing the way it brings to bear in a holistic way so much of our organisation. The library, our sustainability office, our researchers, our operations. It's a testament to what we have done at Western. And I'll say something more about how we've been acknowledged in that regard, but for me, it really captures what we have done at Western. The thought leadership events were an amazing initiative. And of course, that is the genesis for this book, the 17 thought leadership events that were held between November 22 and November 2023 at Western Sydney Universities. And the intent was great. It was, okay, we're number one in the world. At that point, I think only twice or maybe once. But what are we going to do about that? Well, let's provide some thought leadership for the globe. Let's get the experts in Western, in teaching or operations or in research, in the areas of sustainability writ large, and let's get them to give open presentations for anyone in the world to watch or re-watch. What a great idea. Presenting the pressing sustainability in our time were what were presented on by our global experts. And we had some people from outside of the world. Fostering knowledge exchange and collaboration. I said before that Western was number one in the world in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings 3 years in a row. It is an amazing thing. We are the only university still to this day that has number one in any global ranking. The only university in this country to have been the number one in any global ranking. And we do it 3 times in a row. And this was for our commitment to the UN Sustainability Goals, as you know. Top 10 in 7 SDGs. So not just number one, not some fluke or some dark arts magic by whoever was in charge of global rankings. No, we were in the top 10 in 7 SDGs. That's an holistic effort. That's no accident. Number 1 in the world for gender equality, the most recent rank. 3rd for life on land. 4th in responsible consumption and production. 4th for climate action. 4th for partnering for the goals. 4th in the world, Square Free Stadium, has been a university that partners outside on the SDGs. 9th in clean water and sanitation. 8th in reduced inequalities. We are a university of translation and impact. So the purpose of the book, of course, was to document and disseminate the rich insights that were shared during those events and put it together, assemble it as a lasting resource for students, researchers, practitioners for the 4 or 5 reasons that Fiona just outlined. An open resource book with all of those benefits associated with that, not behind some paywall. Expand access to discussions that have shaped the university's contributions here and to showcase that for the world, but not just in a boasting way, but to do it in a way that we can share and influence and inspire others to do the same. So it is also, of course, the book highlights for me the interdisciplinary collaboration amongst the editors, the contributors from diverse disciplines and within the university. It emphasises collective endeavour. It emphasises, as I say before, interdisciplinary collaboration and how those are the best ways to tackle the complex sustainability issues of our times. The book aims to inspire action, to inform policy. It is about translation, whether that be through engagement, but also through impact. It's a foundation for ongoing dialogue and initiatives that will advance action on sustainable development, both locally and globally. So, in conclusion, I reiterate the significance of sustainable development without borders as a testament to Western Sydney University's dedication to sustainability and Western Sydney University's role as a thought leader in addressing the global challenges of our time. Western Sydney University has always prided itself at being at the forefront of sustainability, equity, not only within our institution, within our walls, but throughout society, if not the globe, without borders, is, from my view, absolutely the right metaphor for this text. I proclaim to you all the magnificence of this book. Fantastic. Well done.
Our first speaker is Lucy Walton, Scholarly Publishing Consultant at Western Sydney University. Lucy will reflect on the creation of this open access compendium, shaped by 9 important works and many contributors. And she'll highlight the message of the foreword by Duncan Ross, that open research has its greatest impact when it reaches those who need it most. Please welcome Lucy Walton.
So thank you very much for joining us today to celebrate the launch of our new open access compendium of research articles. It's a proud moment for us, and it's not just because we're unveiling a new publication, but because we're affirming our collective commitment to making high-quality, peer-reviewed research openly available to all. This compendium represents more than a collection of articles. It's a contribution to a broader movement towards transparency, accessibility, and equity in scholarly communication. By removing paywalls, we're enabling students, researchers, practitioners, and policymakers around the world to access, use, and build on this knowledge without restriction. We're especially honoured to include a foreword by Duncan Ross, a leading advocate for open data and evidence-based policy, and the former Chief Data Officer at Times Higher Education. During his time at Times Higher Education, Duncan played a key role in developing global university rankings, including the Impact Rankings, which assess institutions on their contribution to the UN Sustainability Development Goals. In his foreword, Duncan writes, "The true power of open research lies not just in what we publish, but in whom we make it available to." And that guiding principle is reflected throughout this compendium. It's about reaching beyond traditional academic circles and making research matter globally. This publication is the result of a remarkable collaborative effort, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge the authors of the 9 works that form the backbone of this compendium. Each contributor has brought original, rigorous scholarship to the table, with articles spanning diverse topics, disciplines, and research methods. Whether addressing urgent real-world challenges or advancing theoretical understanding, these authors exemplify what open, impactful research can look like. So, I'd like to sincerely thank the following authors. Roger Attwater for Climate Action at Western, Sebastian Pausch and Jen Dolan for their article, From Hot Suburbs to Cool Towns, in conversation with Dr. Cool, Jessica Weir for Leaning into Differences to Respond to Catastrophic Bushfires, Stephen Healy and Abby Melig-Lopez for their article, Redrawing the Circular Economy, Organic Waste and Peri-Urban Futures, Hawkesbury Nepean Waterkeeper Alliance and Michelle Ryan for their article, Is This for Real? Urban Platypus in Western Suburbs and Western Sydney's Waterways, Caroline Mills, Danielle Tracy, Kitty Mack and Jeff Scobie for their article, Workforce Issues in the Disability Sector, Susan Gannon for Gender Matters, Gender Equity, Equality and Gender Justice, Pedram Kozronajed and Helga Gershik-Griffin for their article on civilian Germans of Persia and their fate in Australian World War II intern prison camps, and Isabella Pereira Watts for The Genie is Out, Is AI a tool of war or peace? I feel like I'm reading out the Academy Awards. Your commitment to open research and academic rigor is what makes this compendium possible and valuable. I'd also like to acknowledge the editorial and publishing support teams behind the scenes, those who coordinated peer review, ensured open licensing, and worked to make each article accessible, discoverable, and citable. This is a team effort from start to finish. To our students, research colleagues, and broader academic community, this compendium is for you. We invite you to read, share, cite, and reuse these works. And we hope they inspire new research, new collaborations, and continued curiosity. And now, I'm delighted to hand over to our author speakers, who will share brief overviews of their contribution and their insight and the insights their research offers. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. And now I'm delighted to hand over to some of the contributing authors who will share highlights from their articles and reflect on the ideas they have explored. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Dr. Roger Attwater, Director of Environmental Sustainability at Western Sydney University. Dr. Attwater, please share what big picture developments have emerged since your snapshot.
Thank you, Badra. So firstly, I'd like to also acknowledge we're on the lands of the Burra-Muddigal clan, the Burra of the Darug Nation, and on our campus nearby we do have the Burra, the iconic Parramatta eels within our campus. Really like to thank the library team for being able to be a part of this. To echo what Kevin was saying, the richness of the perspectives around sustainability and resilience, I think really shows how our maturity and as communities of practice in our research, in our teaching, in our operations, in our engagement. And that's also reflected, of course, in our SDGs. So I'd just like to update you on a couple of areas which have been developing since the snapshot in 22, and it's very dynamic space. Firstly, we're very, very proud that to add to our carbon neutral achievement and carbon positive aspirations, we've now committed to being nature positive as well. And we have our baseline. We want to make sure we don't go backwards in that, and we've had some great steps in that way. So our targets now and our international commitments are climate and nature positive for 2029. Now, that also really leads into one of our really key strengths in nature-based solutions to climate action, which I think is a growing area of our interest. We have a lot of work already about bushfire risk management, biodiversity stewardship, and biodiversity stewardship and carbon are examples of emerging markets in ecosystem services. Carbon markets very well established, biodiversity stewardship markets established in New South Wales and other areas of Australia, nutrient offset programs developing in Sydney water. We're seeing more and more of these markets emerging. And so the consolidation across those of what assets we have, the developing methodologies, which are very new to us as they emerge, are really, really important. Associated with that, and another big driver, which came out of international task forces on climate risk and nature-based risk, is corporate climate risk reporting. So that has, since the presentation a couple of years ago, Australia has embedded Australian sustainability reporting accounting standards, and corporations are expected to undertake rigorous climate risk assessments against two established technical scenarios, look at the physical impacts in terms of bushfire, flooding, also transitional risks, which are the really, really interesting ones, reputation, finance, many more of the emergent organisational requirements now needs to be agile with those. That is also coming through us to the New South Wales areas, and it's something which is a key area which we'll be working with a range of stakeholders over the next 2 quarters to bed that down. The other aspects that we've been looking at is as part of a broader sustainability funding model, where at the moment we use income from biodiversity stewardship. We want to ethically invest in our offsetting requirements as carbon neutral. We do that with projects in Indonesia and Vietnam, where we have teaching and research engagements and partnerships. We want to look into as well, to try to get ahead of the game, to insetting, which is generating your own carbon credits, Australian carbon credit units. And the best established method is environmental planting. So again, it's a nature-based solution. This model here is a very optimistic model of how we can achieve climate positive, which is basically that we capture more emissions than we emit. Now, there are some very bold assumptions in our carbon footprint being able to be reduced by 70% by 2029 or 2030. And then you see this is our residual carbon footprint. We are just starting to have one pilot of an established carbon farming project with Landcare Australia. If we can ramp up the scale, the potential is we will accumulate in a biological growth curve that carbon and the associated carbon credits, so that we reach this area here where you can see that we are capturing more carbon than we are. Sorry. So this is something, it's very optimistic, but it's something we're working to. The scale of what we need to do and the time frames are very challenging, but that's the nature of the situation we face. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Attwater. Our next speaker is Dr. Caroline Miss, Senior Lecturer, Occupational Therapy at Western Sydney University. Dr. Miss, can you please describe the workforce challenges and opportunities within the disability sector? What are the possible solutions? Right? Oh yeah, I'll stay close to my mic.
I have a loud voice. Yeah, so thank you. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that my two of my co-authors are here today. Kitty Mack is here and Jeff Scobie is here. So Lenny or Tracy couldn't make it today, but the important thing about this work is that it happens. What this did is put people in a situation of far more precarious work, lots more disability service providers, And so it's harder for organisations to hold on to workers, to appreciate workers. What we're seeing is the government squeezing the funding for disability workers, and so that's really challenging for people in the sector. And we work together on the Western Sydney University. It's Western Sydney Research and Practice Hub for Disability, which is some researchers as well as some people from the sector, as well as people with lived experience of disability. And we pull work together in primarily reduced inequalities, but we also have some projects targeted at education and healthcare specifically to move things forward in those sorts of areas. So I wish I could say that we have solved this issue since this chat that we had a couple of years ago. We haven't, but we are still working towards this. And the important thing for us as a university is that we're training huge volumes of health professionals who go out and work in the disability sector or adjacent to the disability sector. So we're training occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech pathologists. We're training social workers, teachers, psychologists across our university. There's hundreds of them. So we want to make sure, and this chapter hopefully will do that, to make sure that we're training them to do a good job, whether they're working directly with people with disability or whether they're working in a place like a hospital or a school where they will very likely meet and work with a person with disability. So that's a really important role that the university has, and it's important that we partner with communities in doing that work. And that is about all I have to say on that. Thank you for coming, and I will see everybody soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mills. And our final speaker is Professor Susanne Gannon, who is the Associate Dean of Research at the School of Education, Western University. Professor Gannon, what are your findings on recent school leavers' perspectives on how gender shapes educational experience?
Thank you very much. And I have a few remarks to make before I get onto that, if that's okay, answering your question. So first of all, thank you so much to the library people who came up with the idea of the Thought Leadership series. It was very helpful for me to articulate the whole big picture of an ARC grant that we had just begun, or we were partway through. So the hour-long lecture, which has had 109 views as of 10 minutes ago. And so if you want to increase my stats, please go and look at the whole lecture. That will give you the overview of the whole project. But I chose to do a different thing with the chapter. Open access, I just want to make some remarks there too. I was lucky enough when I enrolled in a PhD in 2000, 25 years ago, to go to Germany for an event called the International Women's University, which had people from all around the world, many, 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 many countries. The first person I met was from Kazakhstan, for example. The only person I've ever met from Kazakhstan. Most of the people who came there from India, from Africa, from the former Eastern Europe, threw away their clothes in our 3 months in the university. I was in a dormitory behind the Social Sciences Library at the University of Hanover and took home photocopies of books from the library. So the principle of access for academics in a highly monetized and profitable and controlled by large publishers is one I'm very, very excited to be a part of here at Western. What else did I want to say there? Also, those firewalls are so difficult for us to get our messages out past to the general public and to policymakers. So again, grateful for that. So very briefly, this project was an ARC grant, a funded grant, so we're obligated to get our message out as widely as possible and in academically recognised and rigorous ways. I'm grateful to how you manage the process of peer review and so on, so it could count in that way. And I chose to run through one set of the data that we had collected for this chapter and do something quite different to what I had done in the Thought Leadership lecture. So the grant, first of all, Kerry Robinson and I were the recipients of this centrally funded ARC grant, and it had a sort of temporal span. Both Kerry and I had worked in the 1990s in different ways prior to academia and partly in academia around projects on gender equity. It was a very busy time in federally in Australian education around gender equity. There was a large national gender equity framework for Australian schools, which had a whole lot of dimensions. So we wanted to know, but for various reasons, including a change of government, it sort of fell away and nothing much happened for a couple of decades. So we wanted to find out how do young people now think about gender? We didn't, can I say, in the multiple times I put this grant in, until we were finally successful, we had no idea just how volatile, or I didn't, this space would be. How contested, how ideological, to borrow a word from Donald Trump. Sorry about that. We tried to stay very open to what young people told us. I have so many parts of this paper highlighted that I won't have time to talk about, but I wanted to, so what I did was I took just one chunk of the data, that is, and one chunk of the participants, our students. I thought I'm talking to Western Sydney with this chapter. Who are our students? They were from disciplines across the entire university, from engineering to teaching to occupational therapy, probably in there too. I'll quite check that. But what do they say gender means to them? What do they understand by gender equity? And what can we learn from them and from their voices? So that's what this chapter is. Just a navigation through what our students said to us 2 years ago. Can I say almost none of them in 2019, despite the walls being plastered with posters, had seen the Respect Now Always campaign that we were very proud of. One thing to note, how did that not get through? But I had one quote I wanted to end with. Can I do that? So this is a quote from Lily that sort of sums up. Lily was 19 in first year at UWS of an undergraduate degree. She says about what gender equity is. It's not just what's in your pants. It's so broad. It can be cultural, it can be spiritual, it can be economic, or it can be a method of survival. Gender can be. So in our society, in Australian society, I do think there needs to be definitely more recognition of people that don't fit the binary that society has dictated to them. Our society is such a, what box you can tick on any type of form, what uniform you can wear to school, things like that. I think we must become more fluid as a society as well. So if you want to see how I got to the decision to use that quote as my end point, please read the chapter. Yeah.
Thank you to all our speakers for your thoughtful and inspiring contributions today. To our keynote speakers, Ms. Fiona Salisbury, Professor Kevin Dunn, and Ms. Lucy Walton, thank you for setting the stage and sharing the vision behind sustainable development without borders. To our authors, Dr. Roger Attwater, Dr. Caroline Mills, and Professor Susanne Gannon, thank you for highlighting the real-world impact of your research. And a final thanks to all our authors and contributors whose insights brought the book to life. And we are deeply grateful for your time and expertise. And Sustainable Development Without Borders 2025 edition is now officially published and available online.
So we have our speakers ready. If anyone in the room has a question, please raise your hand. And if you're online, please add your question to the chat or put your hand up in the online space if you wish to speak. I might kick it off with a question that any of our authors could answer. What are the biggest barriers to achieving sustainability at local versus a global scale?
Oh, you go. It's probably capitalism when I think about it. It's this idea that there's an unequal distribution of resources, and it seems like there's a small collection of people who are hoarding the resources, and perhaps arguably of us in this room and in this country are part of the people that have more, as opposed to people that experience disadvantage. And what we're seeing is this narrative that's driven, and we're seeing this in the United States. That's the elephant in the room. This narrative that's being driven that's quite damaging towards various vulnerable communities. We're seeing funding withdrawn from science. We're seeing, federal government protections for students with disabilities in schools being withdrawn and scaled back. And we're seeing transphobia, and we're seeing all this kind of stuff. And that's probably the issue. It's not that there's not enough resources for everybody. It's just that there's some ideologies that are driving some things, and that is making things even more unequal. And that is probably a barrier to my mind.
Mm. And can I just add on to what Caroline has said, that within those unevennesses is a tendency to divide and separate and make and create envy, competition, hostility, fear of anyone, of the other, of things that are different. That's the wedges. We don't have a wedge politics that's a big wedge. We have many, many, many wedges being produced and mobilised to separate people. So our students tended to say, like the trends were, people should be respected. People should be able to self-define. People should be able to describe themselves as they want. This is a matter of respect for people. Yet they didn't seem to have any sort of collective route to head in that direction. They didn't know about our own campaigns, and they were wary of existing structures, movements like feminism. Be loud.
So I agree. It's aspects of equity and climate justice reflect social justice. We know that climate change impacts will be largely felt by the global south, who have least resources and least ability to be agile, while the developing nations who have the resources drag the chain and make it far more important, especially in these times of lack of truth and in the presentation, to really walk the talk and show what we are doing. Here, it comes down to the simple equity aspects of affordability and everyday life, with people battling just to get by. And unfortunately, a lot about the technologies and things that are available are out of the reach of many people. Electric vehicles being a case in point, we hope that they will become more affordable. They are, but then you buy into Chinese lithium magnates and that sort of thing. So it's a really double-edged sword of the ethics and the equity.
Thank you for sharing. I'll clear your head. We may have questions in the room. Professor Deepak.
Hi, question. Susanne, you talked about when you were in Hanover that everyone threw out their clothes and filled their suitcases with literature. I'm just wondering about the textile waste bit there.
Yeah, well, we didn't talk about the ethics of that, but I was at James Cook University in Cairns starting my PhD. If I wanted a journal chapter, I had to pay $2 to get it photocopied and mailed up from the main campus in Townsville, which is outrageous. So there wasn't a universal accessibility in a pre-digital time. The textile waste, well, I'm not going to authorise that. People's inequitable access to resources was starkly evident at that event, 3 months on a semester. I could talk to you for over a cup of coffee about all the ways that people were, making what little funds they had go as far as they could and taking back what they needed. Thanks. Was there a question?
Yeah, I have, Roger, When I was at the Global Sustainable Development Congress in Thailand last year, and there were a lot of people from universities in Global South asking, what does it cost to do the sorts of things we've done in operations, as well as in research and all that. I mean, research is already hard for them to invest in the infrastructure, etc. Sure, they can get into the teaching parts of sustainability and all the rest of it, and some degrees, but there are limits to what they can do. But they were particularly interested in what does it cost and what's the payback. And this goes to a bit of what you was just saying before. I mean, it's expensive to start this journey, isn't it? And how expensive is it? Is it possible for Global South universities to do this sort of thing, Felipe?
I think we have a role through international carbon markets to invest. So every organisation that offsets their carbon footprint can choose to invest in technology or nature-based projects in developing countries. There is a very clear language around the more expensive the more valuable and more expensive carbon offsets having greater social co-benefits, environmental co-benefits, and it's sort of trying to find that middle ground, because I think through carbon and international carbon markets, we can, in our situation, help invest in those situations and hopefully provide the stepping stones that help establish, which is a problem stage, and then slowly grow things like more local nature-based solutions. An example here for, say, like our carbon farming, which we haven't got to a stage of that yet, is that there are well-established methods to go into collaborations with landholders in rural areas, where the assumption is made that the value of the land is equivalent to the value of the project, and therefore there's a 50-50 share of any carbon credits from, say, environmental plantings. That provides good financial and sort of diversification opportunities for regional communities. So we always have to be very careful of the other side of that coin with greenwashing, but I firmly believe that through engaging these business and connectivity opportunities in these markets for ecosystem services, we help kickstart broader support for that.
Amazing. Bringing your background on climate action to the question. We might have any online questions or any further questions in the room. Yes.
Hi, my name is Aisha. So last week, the Monash's Sustainability Development Report came out. The State of the Nation Transforming Australia report came out. And in that, though Australia is leading in certain NTGs, but then it is lagging in one of the most important criteria, that is the environmental goals, especially SDG 13, which is regarding climate action. So why do you think why are we still lagging? I mean, though we are at the forefront in the major thing, what is your take on this, and what can be done, to, reach those goals much faster?
I've got to say that we hear a lot of that kind of anxiety about it through our students and people. I feel that same anxiety because the more you know, the more you realise the scale and the challenges involved. But all you could do is start a path and follow that path, like sustainability being a path rather than an objective. We need to set down those stepping stones and progress them and be patient and be resilient in our own efforts. And just be optimistic that we can make a difference. And a lot of the Resilience Alliance work shows that there is inherent resilience in ecological systems. And if we can help it through a little bit, there was a very good presentation by Professor Reich at the Hawkesbury Institute the other day. In some areas, there's a possibility that through small efforts globally, you can make a significant difference.
Should we ask more of our politicians with more courage?
I think they only reflect what our views are. So the more that we walk the talk, I believe they will pick up on that. They're not I think they're more followers than leaders. I mean, from
We have to
what
talk
we
to
do, we've got to walk the talk. They will pick up on what we need.
Walk the talk. I like that. Lead in those footsteps. We give us.
So this is just a general question for everyone, but there's a lot of political discourse right now that universities have put accusation that universities and researchers are only doing this for the money, for the funding, for the prestigious title. What do you have to say to combat that type of misinformation?
Great question.
That is a great question. Yeah, I feel like I'm cynical. Governments don't like universities because we are not backwards about coming forwards often in the things that we know about, and that's why we're here, and they're scared of us. I mean, I think there's economists in this university that could probably run the country better than the politicians who are running it, and I think that's a threat. So that's where we see some of this damaging narrative coming out. It is based on that threat, and I guess there's a cynicism sometimes within academia that there's these ivory tower people, and they do get the money and the fancy titles, and actually they don't really care about the communities that they seek to serve. And I suppose in my work it's very much partnered with people where I'm sitting in a real organisation or talking to a real person or out in the community and saying, what is this? So talking to our students, what is, because a lot of them, they're living with disabilities, they're family members with disabilities, or they currently work in the disability sector, or they plan to. And it's like, tell us what's happening in real life. And I came into academia, I was a clinician. I didn't understand what academia was about before I got here. And so that's still where my mind is, I suppose. So that's my position on it. And I don't suppose that's everybody, but that's my position on it.
And of course, I came in after being a teacher in high schools for quite a long time. And the same, I think at this university, it's pretty consistent in all our, staff boys, whatever that tool is, that we are not that sort of corporate, where's the money? That's not what drives us so much as we need to seek funding because that's what universities do, but we do it to do work that matters, that makes a difference, that connects with our communities, with our social justice objectives. I think that's probably been the strength of Western Sydney University pretty well for the 20 years or so I've been here, while we have founded on some other measures here and there. That's been our guiding beacon, certainly why I've stayed in all those contacts we have from recruiters trying to get us to apply for jobs at other places. I've thought, no, this is a place that has a commitment to its community. Don't want to be spooking like I'm giving an ad, but it's been like the like right there than other places that I've observed.
So is it fair to say, instead of the narrative of academics are above others and doing these unfounded research that mean, nothing for the community, just for funding or whatever it is, that the research that is being done are by the people from the community. For someone like me, and I'm not an academic, I'm just a general human being with a part of the public, I'm sitting here because I was given the opportunity to be involved in it, because this is something that does impact me personally, and it impacts the people that I work with, it impacts people in my community, etc., etc., etc. So we are a part of it. And so rather than saying, I suppose just putting it out there, rather than saying it's an academic versus members of the community, it is, the members of the community are the so-called academics. They are the research. They are driving that research. It is about them all there, rather than.
So we need to talk to you. We need to come and have coffee. We need to come to your meetings. We need to learn from you what your priorities are in case we've become too distant and we're missing it. It's the barriers in our everyday working lives and whatever that stop what should be happening, if that's how you're feeling about it.
I think there's an acknowledgement there of a power imbalance, and I think I meet people in the communities, because university people are kind of intimidating, and Some of them are. And so I think it's about breaking down those power imbalances. And I tend to think of it in the disability space and in the health space. There's different kinds of expertise and academic expertise, and the PhD crowd, as I call them, which I'm now a part of, I suppose, but is one kind of expertise. Lived experience is another kind of expertise, and it's a very valid kind of expertise. Practice experience and management expertise within the disability sector, which is what Jeff has as experienced manager in the disability sector. That's a kind of expertise. We have family members expertise. So there's all these different kinds of expertise, and it's about how we bring them together. And that is what's really important. And that's kind of what I try to do, and we try to do that for.
Yeah, like a cohesion of everybody. And I think also acknowledging that it's not either or. It's not like you are an academic or you're a family member or something. You can be both. You will be one.
And I have PhD students, for example, who are neurodivergent or who have lived experience of disability, and it's about saying, how do we support those people on the journey so that they do get to the end and they are a person with lived experience of disability, but also an academic, but also a professional in space. So we're starting to get dual expertise with that as well, and you try to do that.
I think now we're getting more mature in our practice and our engagement and our education and our research in doing it collaboratively and reaching out through networks and groups and other advocacy groups. We now have more intellectual frameworks to assist with that, thinking about communities of practice as stepping stones for social learning. But it really means getting out there and working with people in real conditions and real situations faced. The biggest problem, the same with the access and equity, is the most challenged people are always the most difficult to reach.
Very true. Yes.
Oh, we've got some feedback from Caroline, from Brenda Odawan at Macabre Disability Service. They're incredibly proud to be featured in this publication, and they'd like to extend their heartfelt thanks to the board director, Carolyn Mills, and the CEO, Jeff Scobie, and Western Sydney University. They look forward to continued collaboration on future projects.
Thank you, Brenda.
Please join me in thanking all of our authors, today's speakers and contributors.